Are we ready? It's time. I will call the meeting to order. This is more people than we've seen since COVID. Right. You'll have your opportunity to speak, I would suppose. I'm curious about what you're here for, and we will find out. The first thing on every agenda for the planning board is public comment, but the rules of public comment, period, this one, is that you may only speak on things that aren't on the agenda. So if you've got an issue that isn't on the agenda and you want to speak about it, now is your chance.
2 minutes.
No takers. Okay, if in the course of the meeting you do wish to speak, an additional rule that you need to know about is that this is all televised, and in order for the people at home watching, I don't think it's a big audience, but it's somebody, you have to be at that microphone or they can't hear you at all. So if you're going to speak, you need to go to that mic. You need to be recognized by the chair. You need to go to the microphone and speak into the microphone and begin by saying what your name is and then what your issue is, and then say whatever it is you have to say. So that's it, and we can move on. So next we have the minutes. Paul?
I recommend approval of the minutes of June 14th, 2022 as correct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay, next thing on our agenda is an approval not required plan. The applicant is Kathleen McGovern. Plan of land to create lot N2 to be merged with existing lot B, maps number 3406-009-0000N and 34 with another long number, filed June 22nd, and it needs to be decided by July 13th. Who is going to speak to that?
Hello, my name's John Doyle. I'm a professional land surveyor from Falmouth, and I am here to represent Kathleen McGovern. I don't know if we're going to pop this thing up here now, or I'm going to get some assistance to pop it up here. So what you see here are 2 parcels of land that Kathleen McGovern owns. They run east to west from St. Mark's Road to Great Pond. They're each about 3 acres. They've owned these pieces of property for years. She's getting quite old, but what we're trying to do here is the northerly lot has been down through the old plans called Lot B, and the southerly lot. And what we want to do is cut off a portion of N, which we're going to call N2. So we'll have the larger lot of N1 remaining, and lot at N2 will be merged with Lot B. The lot we're cutting off is only about 2,000 square feet. Both of these parcels will still front on St. Mark's Way. St. Mark's is a town road. I talked to Scott Schluter of the Falmouth Engineering Department, and he concurs with me about the lines of this road being a public road. And I guess that's pretty cut and dry. If anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer them. It's an approval not required plan. We're asking for you to endorse that it is not a subdivision.
It's my understanding that both of the lots will still have the correct frontage?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, both lots will still have sufficient, this gives frontage to the more northerly lot, right?
It does. It gives
That's the
more
purpose?
frontage to the northerly lot.
So now both lots will have the correct frontage.
Both lots will conform to zoning with respect to the required frontage.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
It's not a question, I just had a comment, because when I was looking over this with Jed, if you notice how they're kind of diagonally out into the roadway, it's not a straight roadway,
Yeah,
and it occurred to me that that lot N2 cannot be just simply added to the 91 feet, because you would have to square that off. And so I did a quick and dirty sort of thing, and it's okay. It's probably about 1 foot over the 100 that's necessary for it. I just wanted, in case anybody else noticed that and had a question.
it's
Okay.
true, there's a little zig there.
There's a little zig, and you can't, see how that goes out?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I just wanted to make a comment. I'm okay with it.
mm-hmm.
Jed was okay with it. Looking at that too, we did the same kind of thing, you know, to square it and say, yep, looks good.
Jed, you have any other comments?
I recommend endorsement.
Paul?
I just have a minor comment. Is Ms. McGovern here?
I didn't see her when I looked earlier.
Okay,
And
no,
I
that's fine.
don't think she has to come down from north of Boston, and she's in a wheelchair, so.
I looked at her address. I lived around the corner from her, and I was wondering who she was many years ago.
Well, her daughter is Kathleen too, and she's an attorney, and she's been the one dealing with me
It's a
on
minor
this.
point.
You have a motion to endorse?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Endorsed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, our second item. It's for decision. We've got a decision prepared here. The applicant is Conservation Group Incorporated, Green Seal Environmental LLC. Site plan review application to reconfigure existing parking areas and access driveways to be paved and striped in compliance to the bylaw located at 81 Technology Park Drive. And the deadline for this is June 29th.
Madam Chair, if I may. After the last planning board meeting, I've had conversations with the applicant. There appears to be confusion on my part, and I hope perhaps not on the planning board, about the two driveways. At the last hearing, when you officially closed, there was an indication that that northerly driveway would be for emergency access only. I believe that the applicant has a statement that they'd like to provide and a request to you. But the Cliff Notes version here is that they would like to not have that be an emergency access driveway, and they have a request to outline that. And
That was actually said. They said that at one point. I think what was said was there's no reason for it to be emergency only.
yeah, again, I think the confusion was in relation to the verbiage on the signage. I assumed that the driveway would still remain emergency access only, but the signage language would change. And so I guess I would just ask if you entertain the applicant to describe fully what they're looking for.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Roy Cataniani from Conserve Group. I was here a few times before, and our engineer, Jose. I represent the architecture part of this and the building part of it. Jose is our engineer. So if you have a technical question, I'll refer to Jose. Really, I wanted to capture the thoughts you had in your debate last time we met. And your discussion was exactly to that point, that we have an existing driveway. We are going to make a new driveway that'll be our primary driveway. Parcel's quite big, and for years and years and years, they've used the driveway that's there as the access to the building. And it just struck me that to add a sign that indicated no one should go down this road, it struck me a little odd, because in fact, as talking with Jed, and I want to thank you so much for calling and discussing this subject with me in between meetings, so as to create this moment. You do allow, theoretically, a second driveway. It's not prohibited, so we'd like to keep it. That's really the bottom line. And I talked to the owner, and You'll probably see more development in this parcel in the near future. We're talking about that. And when we do, it'll even become more important that we have a second way out, because if we're gonna develop more traffic here, we certainly don't wanna push it all through one driveway and through you know, an entrance which is far away from where we may be having in the future new construction, and that we're talking about that, and we'll come forward with a proposal. But that's not really germane to this discussion, because you haven't had that conversation, and we didn't have that plan, but we're talking about it now. Really, more importantly, you just don't want to restrict it. If you all can see that that's a reasonable point, we'd appreciate if we could eliminate the sign. On the other hand, if that's not comfortable for members, you know, maybe the idea of just taking the word "only" off.
Okay, so
that-
let me understand. This doesn't impact any of the engineering, any of the drawings, anything.
Right.
It just impacts what the sign says on the driveway. Is that right?
That would be really our request. I mean, in my view, again, as I think Jed and I discussed, that an emergency vehicle will use whatever entrance it thinks is safe and appropriate in the case of a fire or an event, a serious event. So whether we label it as the drive or not, I think, to me, and that may be something that came from the fire department, they prefer that, I don't know. For me, I just didn't like the idea, nor does the owner, of just restricting its use and just allowing it to be used.
Understandable.
So
Okay,
I
any
would love it if
comment
you'd
from the
consider it.
board?
So we're looking at eliminating condition 2.
Wait a sec.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or rewording it. As well as, I would propose that we add some language as a finding indicating that they will have 2 driveways. And the last item would be to make a minor modification to the site plan, which has those signage, those 2 signs shown on the site plan, that would come in afterward, and that you would allow for administrative approval.
Let me ask you a question, just a little process thing. We really need to have this done before the 29th, it's the 28th now. And we have here a draft motion that we were prepared to act on tonight.
Correct.
Does that prevent us from doing it? Acting on this motion tonight?
No. Provided that you're all in agreement.
Pat?
Okay,
I saw her hand.
I have a couple of comments to make. When we discussed it the last time, you all were willing to instruct the employees to use the lower driveway. I'll call it the lower driveway, which is the new main driveway. And you thought it would be a good thing to have a sign saying emergency vehicles because there's a more generous curve in there, which would allow for better access by fire trucks. So I'd be willing to eliminate the word "only," but that directs emergency vehicles to come in that upper drive. I'm calling it the upper drive because it's the upper part of the sheet there. But you had said that you would instruct employees to use the other drive because it's right there where all the parking is.
Did you follow Jed's suggestion? His suggestion is different from what you just
I
said.
know.
Oh, okay. Other board comments? Jim?
Well, I think this is a draft in front of us, which means we can finalize it right now. And I think if it's simply taking a simple word or 2 out, we should be able to do it and get these fellas out of here. I hope we don't make it too complicated, because I don't really believe it has any meaning at all. So
Right.
I'd just like to move this forward and take the words out and vote it.
Take the word "only" out.
Yes, just move it forward.
And I'm fine with that.
Because anything else could take another week or 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Other
we're perfectly
comments?
okay if you approve it with the condition that we provide a plan that indicates whatever you request, and then
I
once we deliver.
don't think we even need it. Other
ready.
comments?
I do.
I do.
Paul?
I like the idea of adding a note in the findings and deleting item 2, because it says emergency access twice in there, and if it's in the finding, we don't have to deal with it.
Pat, how does that strike you?
It's okay with me. I just think it's informative for emergency vehicles.
It doesn't change that. Paul, do you want to make that in the form of a motion we can act on to amend this draft first and then act on the draft?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we add to the findings, the additional access off whatever the street is now, Technology Park Drive.
I think it was, your motion was to delete condition number 2 and add
Right.
a new 5, which would
Add a
be,
finding and then delete item 2.
and the finding you're adding is,
Finding would be, the principal access would be at 81 Technology Park Drive.
That'd be fine.
is that okay?
That goes up the hill.
That would be
Is
great.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So amended. Okay, Bob, could you read, do you mind reading the motion?
Finish writing down. Okay, so Paul's amendment is gonna read principal access would be through 81 Technology Drive.
Yep.
The driveway, okay. So, draft June 28th, 2022 motion that the planning board votes to approve the application of Conserve Group, Inc. and Green Seal Environmental LLC for the improvements and reconfiguration to an existing parking area and access driveways along with associated stormwater upgrades located at 81 Technology Park Drive under section 240.12.2, site plan review of the zoning bylaw for a plan entitled Site Improvements Plan 81 Technology Park Drive, Falmouth, Mass. Sheets G1 through G2, C1 through C4, D1 through D3, T1 and T2, scale 1 inch equals 40 feet, dated March 21st, 2022, with latest revision of May 25th, 2022, prepared by Green Seal Environmental LLC, as well as a landscape plan entitled Parking Reconfiguration Site Plan at 81 Technology Park Drive, Falmouth, Mass. Landscape plan, sheet C5, scale 1 inch equals 20 feet, dated May 6, 2022, prepared by Green Seal Environmental LLC with the following findings. The applicants, Conserve Group, Inc. and Green Seal Environmental LLC, are proposing to improve and reconfigure the existing parking area to modify the existing driveways and to make associated stormwater improvements at the subject property. The 5.63 acre property is located in the Limited Industrial B, LIB zoning district, as well as in the Coastal Pond West Falmouth Harbor Overlay District. The lot currently contains a vacant 2-story, 23,900 square foot commercial building, 2 large unstriped gravel parking areas, a small paved unstriped parking area, and both a primary and emergency access driveway. The project includes creating a new paved parking area to provide 81 parking spaces with 4 accessible spaces, constructing of a new main entrance at the existing emergency access driveway, widening and repaving the primary driveway, improving the existing stormwater collection system, and providing new landscaping on the property. The planning board finds that the information provided by the applicant conforms to all the requirements and findings pursuant to section 240.12.2 of the zoning bylaw. The planning board's review does not include building code review, and the board defers to the building commissioner as to issues related to building code and zoning. The planning board considered the submitted referrals and the applicant's response in this matter, and the board will condition its decision accordingly. Principal access would be 81 Technology Drive. Conditions. The plan shall be constructed as approved. Any changes shall be reviewed by the planning board to determine if a modification of this decision is necessary. Pursuant to section 242(1)(c)(2) of the zoning bylaw, no permit for full or partial occupancy shall be issued until the planning board is satisfied that the conditions of this approval and predecessor approvals have been met. 2, the project shall not direct any stormwater runoff to public property, abutters, or public rights-of-ways. 3, the applicant shall complete the work as approved by the engineering division and the driveway permit. 4, the construction of this project shall follow the town's soil erosion and sediment control standard conditions document. References to the Department of Public Works Engineering Division shall be replaced with the planning board, who is the permitting authority for this project.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
You're approved. Thank you very much. It's a nice project. Yeah. Okay, our next piece of business tonight is is a public hearing. It's a continuation. The applicant is Neto Politi, continued. Special permit for parking within 5 feet of the front property line located at 797 Main Street. Filed April 12th. The deadline is August 8th. And who will be speaking for
I'm
that?
recusing myself.
You're recused? Oh, right.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chairman. My name is Robert Mills. I represent 797 Main Street, Realty LLC, and they're the owners of the property. But behind that LLC, there's some real people, and one of them is Neto Politi. He's the owner of the property. He's here with his wife Kathy, who's a co-owner of the property, and they're here with their son Neto, who operates the business as well. Madam Chairman and members of the board, we seek a special permit under Section 240-14.1 I-5. I was not the original applicant. It was Dave Cleary, who was the general contractor on the site, so I'm arriving to the party a little bit late, but I think I'm up to speed on what this board expects this evening. I also have some knowledge of the title because I represented Mr. Politi when he purchased the property some time ago. And of course, I've known him from historically when he first opened the business on Main Street many years ago, and even prior to that when he was a fish vendor with the lobster trap. So we go back a long way. You know, the section that I just referenced authorizes parking in the front setback. It also authorizes parking within 5 feet of the property line. And that comes really into play here as well when we talk about the westerly sideline of the property, which is adjacent to Eastman's, because we are seeking parking consistent with the easement plan of record on that westerly sideline. So, excuse me. When you're looking at the plan, what we're talking about here, oh, it won't work on that? Okay. My little red thing won't work on the screen for some reason. So, in any event...
There is a method, though.
Yep. You can just use the mouse.
Oh, that's all right. Don't, you know, with the mouse, I'm not that technologically advanced, so I think I'm just going to talk about it, north, south, and east and west, if that's okay with you. So on the westerly sideline, we're proposing 6 spaces, and I might just say that really this plan doesn't really differ a lot from a plan that this board's already approved in 2020. But it does vary in some respects. So let me just maybe point out how it varies in some respects. So what was approved in 2020 was 4 spaces on the westerly sideline. But they weren't approved at an angle. They were approved perpendicular to the westerly sideline. But there was 4 of them. And then, of course, that plan did not have any parking in the front. So that's really 2 variations from the plan before you tonight. The other variation is that that plan that you approved in 2020 enjoyed some first come, first serve availability of the spaces to the south, which is referenced to Cycle Avenue. We no longer enjoy the benefit of those, as you've probably been made aware of by your planning staff. So what we're looking for tonight is approval and a special permit for the parking in front of the 5 additional spaces as we've shown them, and the 6 spaces on the westerly sideline being within 5 feet of the property line. I do want to point out that, and I've briefly made a reference to it, that the 6 spaces on the westerly, well, 4 of the 6 spaces on the westerly sideline comport with what is expected in the easement plan, which is recorded. And that's an easement plan that's been endorsed by the abutter as well. There's also some reference, and I did review the files at the planning department, when there was no objection to the plan that you previously approved for the previous owner of the property from the abutter to the westerly lots that we're proposing, and I wanted to make a note of that. And the abutter not only did not oppose the westerly lots that we're proposing, but he didn't care, according to his letter, whether they were perpendicular or angular. And quite frankly, neither do we. We've presented them angularly because that was something that seemed to be perhaps best for that site, but they also could be situated perpendicular in essentially the same location. At least the most southerly 4 could be reconfigured in that kind of a manner. I neglected, and I was remiss not to mention that the star of the show is here. Mike Brusselli's the guy that, he's the genius but put this together, so I don't want to take any credit for any of that. But he's here tonight really not to submit new information, which I understand is not appropriate at a public hearing, but to answer any comments. There were comments by the planning staff and we would be prepared to respond to some of those comments. There were comments by the engineering department, which I think we can field and respond to those questions as well tonight to give the board a better sense of things we're prepared to do if the board, was so inclined to approve this special permit. So, be pleased to answer any questions, at least from my perspective and my expertise at this time. If you have other questions about the technical aspects of the plans, Mike's here for that, so.
Okay, Jed, did you want to walk us through your comments?
Certainly. I do think that the plan as presented shows an improvement from the previous plan. There are some dimensions that are missing. For example, the space between Eastman's and this property just needs some accurate dimensional information shown on the plan, noting some areas of the actual easement itself. So it's just putting some dimensional information on the plan. I think the existing curb cut along Main Street that is in front of, or really it's in front of the proposed landscaping area would likely need to be extended in order to prevent vehicles from potentially driving over that grassy area. And there was comments about potentially moving the accessible spaces. They are currently on the immediate west of the building to the front. I think that might be a good idea and something for the board to explore. And then, although I believe it's an attempt to create spacing in the front, those two angled spaces in the landscaping area, I see that being a bit of a challenge, and I would recommend considering just removing those spaces and moving forward with just sort of a landscaped area in the front. But those are my comments.
Okay, and the
at
need
this
for the
point.
special permit is it's too close to hogs and dogs.
Correct. So we have two locations where parking is too close to the property line, and that requires the special permit. You have it on the far west side, as Attorney Mills just outlined, as well as in the front yard. That is a special permit, and then you've got the 5 feet within the property line on the west side.
Okay. Questions from the board? Comments?
Well, I was looking at engineering, and the angled parking on the west side, the spaces aren't long enough.
Correct.
So the vehicle will stick out into the easement.
I think I can respond to that. Well, they were the same on the previously approved plans, except that the previously approved plans didn't show the detail that ours does. Because the previous plan showed a parking stall of 18 feet. Well, ours show a parking stall, I think, of 16 feet, and so if ours stick out into the easement, so did theirs. I mean, the property hasn't changed that much. They just didn't show the detail, or they weren't quite as transparent as we're being. So, the fact that they do stick out into the easement is probably a fact, but that's just one of the limitations of the plan, of the property, excuse me. And they do not obstruct the easement. They're temporary situations. People are going to be parking, backing out, and pulling out. So the easement is certainly wide enough where it's not going to obstruct people from accessing or egressing with that little bit of intrusion into the easement area. So that 18 feet has already been approved in the past.
Other board members? Any member of the public wish to speak on this? Yes.
I have
Mike Burselli.
Mike Boselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. I have the same information on this memory stick with a little bit of illustrated dimensions to maybe clarify
Sure, go
some
ahead.
things for you. I guess the first thing I'm going to share with you is what I believe is the easement plan, but there was a version of it recorded at the Registry of Deeds, but it was so reduced in size that it was fuzzy and it was difficult to read. This is that plan. So if you zoom in on aspects of the plan, we tried to look at some of the dimensions of the easement. The easement is represented by this very thick dashed line. You can see it here, it's 20, there's one dimension I'm able to read, which is, illustrates the width of the easement as 24. But it doesn't dimension any other parts of the easement. For instance, it doesn't show a dimension from the property line to where the easement starts. So when engineers are faced with that dilemma, all they can do is scale it with a scale. Unless there's a written document I'm unaware of. But we did our best to add that easement to our plan. This is the fuzzy version, I'll call it. There was a clearer version that was provided to me. And it has I believe you've seen this plan, and this is the version that shows the parking along Eastman's perpendicular to the property line. And again, you can see the easement as this dashed line, but there's no dimension from the property line, so we were forced to scale it. But you can see that 24-foot dimension there, and I don't know why that keeps going yellow, but I didn't prepare this plan. But one of the dimensions that's important to look at is this 18-foot. It goes from the property line out to here, which is within the easement. And this, I believe, is a plan that you reviewed and approved. My role...
Like, I can't quite tell when you say out to here, where is here?
I'll zoom in a
Because
little
there's
closer.
the rounded line, is that
I'll
indicating?
zoom in. So
length of a
this
car?
18-foot dimension is representing the length of a parking space.
That one right there, okay.
So these lines are like the stripes in a parking lot, and you can see it goes into the easement.
So you're saying it goes 2 feet into the easement, is that it?
Yes, I'll now show you my plan with some of this information on it.
How far into the easement does it go when it's on an angle, as shown in the plan under consideration now?
Actually, slightly less because they're at an angle. But if you let me show you this plan,
Have to be more.
this is the plan that we proposed with, again, with the same easement, but you can see the parking spaces are angled. And I'm showing a dimension from the property line to the easement line, which is 16 feet. We cropped off the lines because we were under the impression that you couldn't have parking spaces shown within the easement, but the plan I just showed you that you approved did show the ends of these parking spaces within the easement. But what I wanted to point out on this plan, and this is something I added to the plan, there's a dimension from the curb at the subject lot with, this is a sidewalk, there's a curb here. The distance from that curb to the property line is 60 feet. Your parking requirements have dimensions for ideal situations, and they are, the depth of a parking spot shall be 18 feet in depth. The travel lane behind the parking spaces for two-way traffic shall be 24 feet. So if you take 18, if these were perpendicular, 18 plus 24 plus 18 equals 60. So there's enough geometrical space. The dilemma is that this easement that we show on the plan, which was compiled from that fuzzy plan I showed you without any specific dimension other than us by scale, showed the very tips of these parking spaces in the easement. Ironically, on this side, there's a little gap where the parking spaces aren't. So I wonder if there was something lost in the scale of the drawing, that the overall 60 feet is enough room. It's just
Right.
where the easement is. So you have in your parking requirements this little illustration. Can you see that? This is straight out of your zoning bylaw. And it talks about 90 degrees in certain dimensions, 9 feet, which is B, which is the width of a space. The aisle width, if it's one-way, which is not applicable here, the aisle width, if it's two-way, 24. And then the parking stall length, E, which is from here to here, you can see the E is 18. So 18 plus 24 plus 18 means you need 60 feet. We have physically on the ground 60 feet. So the parking spaces that were proposed against easements could be 18 feet long on the plan, but they'd creep into that easement by 2 feet. That being said, you approved a plan that showed them that way. That's a roundabout way of just trying to illustrate what the history of where we are. My role in this project was to try to make this a better parking layout than what is out there now. If you know, this used to be Cumberland Farms. There used to be gas pumps out front with a canopy. There was all kinds of traffic out front. The new owner is trying to make it better and trying to be cooperative with his neighbor.
But it's in a business redevelopment zone, and what the town had been looking for in that zoning was no parking in front of the building. So, I mean, things have
Yeah.
transpired since Cumberland Farms was there.
Sure, I'm just trying to give you some history and what my role is. That's the only reason I was bringing that up. There were some comments in the staff report that were some dimensions that aren't shown that we can certainly show, and we were open to other suggestions. We attempted to show a more organized front yard with parking, and these angled spaces were our effort to make this safer. I know there were comments from the abutter about this. We had thought it would be a good idea to have this one way for safety. In fact, I thought there were comments from the abutter about this being unsafe, or the easement holder, I should say. And we thought it was a good idea to make this one way. I now see other comments where this can't be one way. So that was just an idea. It's not something that we are married to. It was just an idea. So this plan was basically an effort to organize a paved area that has old faded stripes on it with several businesses using it. And our role was try to just make that more organized.
Yeah, it's a tricky problem. So you need to have 19 spaces, right? 20 spaces.
We need to have technically 19.2. So I think you'd require us to
Rounding up or
round
down,
up
one
to
way?
20.
Okay, so what was your client's reaction to the Jed's suggestion of taking out the angled spaces that are on the, what side is that?
These,
West side.
these spaces here?
Yeah,
I haven't had a chance to react to that myself, and I couldn't speak for the owner. I just wanted to talk about some of the elements of this plan.
elements, right.
And I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Would the board like to react to the, to what Mike has just proposed? Paul?
So I'm just curious, you have two angled parking spaces in the northeast corner. Are they necessary?
They're not
Before you
necessary.
answer, let me just tell you what I'm thinking of. On the left-hand side, on the west side, you have two island, one in green and one non-green. If you do add those two parking spaces there, you can open up the whole green area and that one area. And that might be a much better solution to backing into the easement on the right-hand side, and you get a bigger green space.
I think you're saying eliminate these and add them here.
One there and the one below it with the land, it's not in green, the landscape island below it. So you got three, landscape plan, three, and then,
Okay.
I'd
have to
I'm
think
just
about
curious
that.
whether that would make sense.
It could
Then
make
you'd have
sense.
more green space out front, which might be more attractive.
It could make sense. We'd have to give it a little more thought. Certainly something we could consider.
It's not a demand, it's just a
Sure, understood.
thought.
One other thing about the handicap space shift, so you understand that. Currently, this is where the ADA spaces are, and there's two. What you'd expect with the cross-hatched area in
Yeah.
between, and there's a slope a ramped part of the sidewalks for ADA accessibility. When we first heard about the idea of moving these here, it seemed like a pretty good idea until we really looked at obstructions that are there for wheelchairs. This curb, there's no cut in this curb. There's a door here. Without doing some significant modification to the sidewalk by creating a sloped area here, you'd be forced to wheel through the parking lot, which we don't think is a good idea.
So you're saying this is just a better
I think
location?
this is safer.
It does seem to be better. Any other board reactions? John, Bob?
Just a comment about business redevelopment and parking in the front. I drove down there, I stopped counting at 29 businesses that park in the front, so I don't think that's a valid point to bring out.
I have to agree with you.
Particularly not on a lot like this.
Yeah.
It's so constricted, there's parking in the front all over beside it.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see this work.
Well, I think we're making an effort to make it work. It would seem. But it looks as if, couple of things. Jed has brought up, we need to, some more dimensions on the plan, a few little changes there, your reaction, whatever it might be, to the changing of the two lots that are on the west side, perhaps moving them over, or not, as you decide, and then see what it might be. But what's the board's sense that we could, while those changes are being made and brought to the planning department, that we could request a positive motion to be developed at the same time?
I think it should be noted that you also have a letter from Attorney Kirk in your file. May be appropriate to allow him to speak to the letter.
This arrived, oh. Excuse me. I don't know that everybody is aware of this. Yes. Would you like to speak? Yes, please. Please come forward.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm Ed Kirk. I represent Ellie Jamal, who's the principal of Falmouth 815 Main Street LLC, which is who owns the lots that Cycle Ave, which you're familiar with, Lot 41, and Lot 18, which is on the east side, and also Parcel 6, which is on the west side. And I did send a letter to the board outlining some of our concerns and objections. A couple of things I'd like to clarify. I don't believe that the so-called recorded plan, it was before this board when Mr. Hayden was the owner, but I don't believe there was ever a decision by this board that took that as a plan which had been approved. That's my memory, that the project sort of halted, and then the property was sold. So I don't believe that there was actually a final decision by the board approving a prior plan. So I just want to point that out. I don't think that you should accept the fact that since you had that plan before you have to be guided by it at this time. There's been substantial change in the nature of the arrangement since that first reciprocal easement agreement was entered into. At the time, the plan was there was going to be residences above a restaurant to go in, sit down, stay for a while, park your car, leave, and sort of a there was some stability to those two uses. The circumstances are a little different now. Obviously, Mr. Politi he's good at what he does because he's got a lot of people coming to his shop. And it's a different kind of traffic pattern altogether now. It's the tradesmen and the craftsmen and the working men in their trucks and their SUVs. They're only open, I think, between 10 and 4, and there's a heavy influx of any number of vehicles during that period of the day, and they're large vehicles. They're not, I guess maybe there's a few sedans, but a lot of his trade is the working people in large vehicles. And one of the things I wanted to is sort of draw a distinction here between, there's a request for a special permit to park out front, and I did not know, I didn't see anything suggesting that he was also looking for a special permit on the west side of the property, that all the information that I had seen was out front, but and I was a little surprised to hear tonight that they're also looking for a special permit on the west side. So we haven't had a chance really to address that in my correspondence. One of the questions I have for the board is, does this not, where at least five new parking spaces are required, does this not trigger site plan review as a separate item? Should he not have to come before the board with a site plan review application? It seems to me that he should, and there should be some of the requirements that site plan would be involved with would have to be addressed. You know, peak hours, numbers of traffic impact, numbers of vehicles, and that sort of thing. There's more going on here than just what's shown on paper. It's a very active site, and everybody is somewhat constrained by the limitations on space, and that's what some of the problems that have arisen. So if it's a request for a special permit out front, that's one thing. We think that that's an accident waiting to happen, those 3 spaces. But I understand now that perhaps the 2 on the other side are going to be eliminated. The other aspect of this is that those spaces are shown on a plan to which we object, the rest of the plan. The plan does not show 2 easements that are part of the recorded plan. Behind the building, where it shows 18,750 square feet with the arrows going in each direction, that easement extends all the way to the property line of Lot 18. There's an easement for the benefit of Lot 18 over and across onto Lot 19. And they do not show the easement opening up at the top of the plan out near Main Street. There's a 12-foot wide easement shown on the other plan, and that does not appear on this plan. So we have objections to the information is not complete. The one-way was put on there by the applicant. Mr. Jamal, 815, Falmouth 815, is the owner of Cycle Avenue. He was not consulted with that proposition to make it one-way, and he objects, and if I understand Mike Porcelli correctly, then that will not be any longer proposed as a one-way traffic. It will remain 2 ways, as it always has been. There are other people, in addition to my client, other landowners behind here who have rights, and those rights to pass and repass from Main Street could not be taken away. The other item that we're talking about is no matter how you do the math, those parking spaces or any substantial vehicle in any of those angled spaces are going to intrude into the traveled way, the easement. If you measure from the 16 feet wide on a straight line, and I imagine, I've forgotten exactly what the testimony was, but I think it's 16 on an angle too. And then you have those tire curbs there. I mean, any vehicle in there is going to overhang, as the town engineer has pointed out very, very clearly, into the easement. And it's two-way traffic, and, you know, there's a very reasonable probability there's going to be obstruction there, and it's a property interest that my client has on that lot, and it's for the benefit of my client's tenants who park on Cycle Ave on both sides, employees at the Hogs and Dogs building and the Eastern Bank. So what you'll be doing is they're asking you to approve a plan that does not conform to the requirements of your zoning bylaw. And it would constitute an interference with the property rights of my client.
Mr. Kerr, could I ask you a question?
Yes.
At a prior hearing on this, last time we got together over this issue, the question was asked about whether or not your clients and the owners of the applicant's property had gotten together to see if they could find a mutually satisfactory solution to what both sides perceive as issues, and they had not. And that had caused, or I understood, maybe wrongly, that they had not, and that seemed to have caused some animosity. And I wonder if, in the intervening time, any effort has been made to work with the applicant to see if you could work it out.
Well, first, we had a meeting with Jed. He was kind enough to invite us to come down and meet with him. And we had some discussions with him in which my client got to express his concerns. There was no, and then there was no agreement reached as a result of that. Rob Mills and I have had minimal correspondence, and he has suggested a meeting, and I asked him if he would send the plan, so we wouldn't just be in a room saying, "Isn't this nice?" We'd have something to work on. And I did get the latest plan the other day, and I responded I think it was that day or the next day, pointing out what my client's concerns were about the plan. And that was, I believe, we haven't met since then, because I didn't hear back from him, but I don't think that there's any reason why we should not perhaps have another discussion about this plan.
It would seem that that would be a fruitful next step, as long as both parties are willing to work together, because I didn't see this letter before I got here tonight. I doubt that the board has had an opportunity to really absorb it. It's dated the 27th. I don't know when exactly we received it. So we're not, and you've raised substantive issues, so we probably won't be proposing any action tonight, and it would be good if you could get together, the two parties, and see what is a mutually acceptable way to make beneficial use of this property.
I concur, Madam Chairman, and I think it needs to be studied carefully by the board, because if you approve a plan and it turns out to be sort of a disaster, it's going to be a permanent disaster. So I think it would be a good thing if we did have some further conversation. I've expressed my view to Rob Mills by a letter, and again here this evening, and I think we should do that in the meantime. we should have a conversation.
Good, because the planning board really wants both businesses to succeed. We don't want to put anyone in a position of not being able to make use of their property or feel that their rights have been in some way harmed. So if you
Yeah.
could please work together and find a mutually acceptable solution.
And I just,
To keep trying,
Can I speak up for a second?
and can I get some sense of whether or not site plan review is actually appropriate
we'll
here?
be looking into all the points that you raised. Could we now, is there more that you want to say?
I think that covers the points I wanted to make, Madam
Okay,
Chairman.
good, thank you. Bob?
Question for Jed. What has kicked in the need for the 20 spaces? Is it the fact there is seating in the building now?
That's correct. Yep.
If there wasn't any seating in the building, how much would that reduce the parking by? Because you look at Hogs and Dogs, 2 spaces in front of it.
If there's no seating inside, then all they would be required to have on site would be 9 spaces. That would just be the retail use, and that is 1 space per 200 square feet, approximately 9 spaces.
Right.
So it's another variable that you can work with. Okay, anyone else who wishes to
I
speak?
have
Yes,
I have a
Mrs.
question first.
Oh, John?
In regards to the seating, it shows 9 seats, but I've been in it, I don't think I've seen 9 seats inside that restaurant. But-
No, there's one table.
But does that include if they have seating outside also? Which-
So the
which would be seasonal, obviously.
Right, so the way it works, the parking calculation essentially has a minimum for that use, for a minimum of 10 spaces, regardless of the number of seats. And because they don't meet the calculation is 1 space per 2 seats. You're testing my memory at this point. They don't have enough to trigger the exact amount, and I'll just read it for the record. It's 1 space per seat, but no fewer than 10 spaces. So
So
they.
if they have 1 seat, they need 10 spaces.
Correct. So that triggers the 10 spaces, plus the 9 for the retail, equals 19 spaces that are required on the site.
And if the seating was only outside seasonal, is that still considered 10 spaces?
Well, so the way the outdoor seating is working in town is that if a business owner wants to have outdoor seating, they can provide the adequate parking, and if they can't, they need to reduce the amount of seating indoors while they have it outdoors. So essentially, they can't create more seats without creating more spaces, more parking spaces. So it would just be moving from inside to outside and maintaining the same number of parking
They have the
spaces.
same requirement?
Yeah,
for
same.
seating.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know, thank you.
I do think it's worth noting for the record, the question about site plan review, the building commissioner, in fact, 2 building commissioners have issued a use and occupancy permit under our previous building commissioner, Rod Palmer, approving the use on the site. And Eladio Gore also ruled in on the change of use, and there was no change in use in his opinion in 2021. So
And therefore, no site plan review
it
is
is not,
required.
in their opinion, triggering site plan review. However, I think it is important to note that we are looking at the entirety of the site through a special permit process to allow potentially parking in the front yard and parking within 5 feet of a property line, as outlined, and I quote, in Article 14, "No part of any private parking area having 5 or more spaces shall be located within a front yard, as defined in Article 3 in our definitions, nor shall any private parking area be located within 5 feet of a property line." That is the language in the bylaw for which they are requesting a special permit, because after that clause, it says the planning board may, by special permit, allow parking in the front yards or within 5 feet of a property line.
And
That
it's
is
the
why
planning
both of-
board that does the special permit, not the
Correct.
CBA.
In that case, yes.
Okay. Mrs. Poole, you wish to speak?
That's all right.
You sure?
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please come to the microphone and give your name.
My name is Lee Jamal. I'm the owner of 815 Main Street. And when the previous owner was working to have the site plan approved and had issues with the ZBA, The use was gonna be a restaurant, small restaurant. When people come in, they'll come in to sit down, have lunch or dinner, and there won't not be that much traffic. If we have pictures of the traffic being so nasty between 11 and 2, we have pickup trucks, city trucks, landscapers. They're parking everywhere. You can't get in, you can't get out. Further, Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned having you get together with your neighbor. Now, when I learned that new owners bought the property, I called them and I introduced myself. Then I went to see them at the old store, and I said we'll work together, and never called me, never respond. I said, you know, you have responsibilities, and I have responsibilities. Code, what he said to me, well, you've got to be careful because I'm going to call the big dogs. That was his response. He's right there. That was his response. I could call the big dogs. Then I never heard from him again. I had my lawyer, Ed, write him a friendly letter saying, you know, we want to work with you, but you need to do certain things. We have to live together, da-da-da. Didn't hear from him. We sent him a notice of default, which we have the right to do under our agreement. Didn't hear from him. The time have gone and didn't hear anything from him. In the meantime, he moved some things out, but he had put permanent storage on my property, and I had to tell him to move it. He had employee parking on the Eastern Bank side. We finally put parking, we finally today, I think, was installed 9 signs that we're gonna be towing cars away. This is absolutely a nightmare. And all you have to do is go there a couple of days a week at lunchtime, and you will agree that this use should not be there. And if it's gonna be there, it's just gonna be a nightmare and for everybody. It's not just the parking, it's the traffic and the kind of cars that come in. Everybody have a landscaping truck and this and that, and the way they park. It's like, they're everywhere. I mean, I have pictures in my briefcase. People are parking, you know, on Untitled Ave, as you're going out. One truck here, nobody could get in, nobody could get out. I had the real big trucks parked in the middle of the parking lot. I got people can't get out, and I had somebody's like waving them, okay, go to the right, go to the left. So I did my share, and I'm not willing to work with anybody. I just want everybody to live by the law, because I did my share. I visited him. I called him first, then I visited him. Then a friendly letter, super friendly letter from Ed, and Ed is right there. And then another letter, and then notice of default. Didn't hear anything from him, not even a phone call. Not even a phone call. And now, respectively, I am not willing to work with him. I just want him to live by the law, and I will live by the law. The previous plan had 4 parking spaces against Harding Dog Building or Eastman Building, not 6. And these parking spaces are property line to the easement is 16 feet. That's from the property line. And by the time you put the bumper cars, for the bumpers, you're gonna lose a couple of feet. These guys are gonna be right in the easement. Right in the easement. 2 feet, 3 feet into the easement. Some vans and SUVs take 22, 23 feet to they need that. I know I was frustrated the last time, but all I heard is untrue statement. And face it, this is fast food. This is not a retail food store. They open at 10, they close at 4. Retail food store and bakery could never survive open at 10 to 4. This is fast food. There's misrepresentation everywhere in the building department on the applications, but we're not gonna go there. I'll leave that for another day.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stick to this. This is a nightmare. I own Cycle Ave. I'm absolutely not willing to make it one way. Absolutely not. And these guys are gonna come in and gonna park against Easement building, which is my building, and they have 14 feet after you put the bumper or some space. Then you get 6, which means you're much narrow over, when you go in, we have that much closer and more cars in and
Mr.
out.
Jamal, I think that members of the board can picture that.
Pardon me?
We can see what you're saying. We can
Okay.
picture the situation
All right.
and picture your frustration with it. I don't have a ready solution. Does any member of the board? No, but I do hope, I can see that right now, you don't need to agree to write this right this minute, but I don't see a way forward other than trying for the two parties to work it out.
I did
Otherwise,
make
you're
your
probably
agreement.
looking at a very expensive court case, and I should think no one would be wanting to do that. So if you could, try and do that.
I want to buy the lot.
I understand that,
I-
right.
and-
And people need to do that, and this is the right
We have
place
other
to
properties in
come
Falmouth
for
that
the
is
zoning
beautiful.
law.
We never take anything for granted.
You need to shut it down.
We do the
Yep,
right thing.
Yep,
Oh,
enough,
okay.
and thank you. I'm sorry that it's such a stuck situation. Yes, Mike?
I just want to make a technical point about there's been a lot of talk about these curb bumpers.
Yeah,
Let's pretend they don't exist. They were an idea to help cars not hit things. They don't come into play with your required dimensional
I'm assuming
standards.
when you get together and try to work it out, things will change, and that might be among them.
But
We have
all
one
I'm
last
trying
person
to,
to speak, yes.
Yes, can I go to the podium?
Yes,
Yes, I will.
and
We don't want it to
I
turn into a
understand
debate.
that there's a disagreement. Please try and keep it brief. We have other business tonight.
Okay, I'm Nato Politi of A Slice of Italy. I did try to work with the gentleman. He came to my store, we talked. I told him it's gonna be a struggle for me, I'm moving, because Longfellow wanted me out of the building,
Okay, sir,
potential renting.
We're not mediators.
Oh, no,
mean,
I know
that's-
that.
That's in a
We-
relationship thing.
Okay, basically, we are trying to work with him, but it's not working. There was a pot on his property, which I agree. I thought he'd let me use it, I'd move it quickly, he gave me 10 days, he said to give me, I moved it in 3 days. We're not parking in his parking lot. He did put signs up today, but the signs say for hogs and dogs at Eastman's, correct? But we have customers that go to Eastman's, get their bait, then they come to our store and buy their sandwich and go fishing. How are you gonna say no to the customer? Is he gonna tell the customer that goes to Eastman, comes to my store? It's gotta work as a group. He's not gonna work, he doesn't want me in business. That's all said and done. And that's all I have to say.
I hope for some success before we see you next.
We heard a long discussion from Mr. Kirk, and I'm curious whether the legal representative for Mr. Paluto is prepared to respond. We've heard a lot from the other attorneys. Are you prepared to make a statement?
Sure. I'm never short on words when it comes to something like this. I can make a statement about a couple different things. You know, there's some suggestion that there's he's opposed to a one-way on the east side of the property. Well, the recorded easement plan has arrows on it. And I assume you've all seen the recorded easement plan. It has arrows going in both directions on the west side, but on the east side, it has an arrow going in one direction. And you can only conclude that the owner of the holder of the easement who prepared the plan put that arrow on the plan. So it wasn't, we weren't the brainchild of the one-way going out on the east side. That's on the easement plan, and it sounded like a pretty good idea because it's pretty narrow on that side, quite frankly. And I think it's virtually impossible, if there's cars parked on that most easterly sideline, 2 cars cannot fit by there at the same time. Absolutely can't, it just doesn't work. Geometrically, it doesn't work. So that is one point I wanted to clarify that my brother raised, that it must be their brainchild because it's on their plan. The other thing is my brother spoke, when I say my brother, I mean Attorney Kirk, who I admire and have known for a very long time, makes reference to easements that exist that are not shown on the plan. But the recorded plan that I have, which has the easement holder's initials on it, as well as the former owner's initials on it that's recorded at the registry, doesn't show any other easements other than the easements that are referenced on this plan. I know he was making reference to a plan at the south westerlymost corner where it says 17.4, just adjacent to where it says Falmouth 815 Main Street LLC, that the easement extended to there, but it's not on the recorded plan. And then the other one he suggests is just north of the landscape island, up at the northwest corner, where it's suggested that there's an easement that exists there, but that's not on the recorded plan either. So I think more by clarification, I'm trying to clarify some of the suggestions that were made by my brother. The other thing is, and I didn't think it would be something that would come up today, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. You know, we're trying to work this out. We are trying to work it out. I sent a letter to Attorney Kirk, and it was really much more conciliatory than I ever get in these kinds of situations. And it was an olive branch, quite frankly. And I said, my client made some mistakes. He put a pod on one of the 9 spaces while he was moving in, and he wasn't supposed to put it there. He moved it, and it was within the 10-day grace period that they gave us. He was supposed to provide an insurance policy that named the easement holder as an additional insured. My client requested that from his insurance agent. Instead of naming him as an additional insured, he named him as a certificate holder. And most people that don't know insurance don't know the difference, quite frankly. And my client didn't know the difference. He asked for something, he got something different. I had to intervene with his insurance agent to clarify the situation and get the easement holder named as an additional insured. Those are the things that triggered a termination of, simple things, really. And I sent my conciliatory letter before the easement was, I think, terminated, before the rights in that 9 spaces to the south were terminated. And I said, you know, please, can't we work this out? The loss of those 9 spaces really adversely impacts my client's business. And the answer, what I got in the mail was a termination that had been recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So that was so much for working things out.
So far.
So far. And I'm always, you know, I'm not averse to it, you know, but I just, in terms of responding to some of the things that have been said, I just have to put it out there. The final thing I'm going to say, because I don't want to take up any more of your time, is, you know, my brother, again, talks about other people having rights in Cycle Avenue. Well, guess what? They're right by this plan right here that you see in front of you. Any rights that the Island Queen has in Lot 41, which is Cycle Avenue, they're gone because it's obstructed. If anybody's parking there, then the rights that the Island Queen has in Lot 41, they're gone, especially if somebody's parked in those spaces. So it raises another question. Is there a special permit for somebody parking within 5 feet of the property line? All those spaces on Cycle Avenue, is there a special permit for parking within 5 feet of the property? They're right on the property line of Island commuters. Same with the ones on the easterly side.
But they're no longer of contention on this application.
They're not in contention, but they're issues that, since it was brought up, that other people have rights. I didn't bring it up. I wasn't going to bring it up, but it was brought up by my brother that other people have rights in Cycle Avenue. Well, guess what? Those rights are gone, to the extent that they have any rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not again.
Really, the fire station is coming in next. I think that it's going to take a while. So whatever it is, Mr. Kirk, make sure it's not something that we haven't already heard.
Rob's recitation of the early chronology is correct. He did send me a letter, which is an invitation to some discussion. But my client, as you can see, was sort of disturbed with the way things were going, and the termination letter was sent.
Yeah.
The Island Queen still does have rights. There's a gate down there. It is registered land.
Right.
And so there is a gate, and the Island Queen still does have rights.
Sure. Okay.
I must say one thing, if you don't mind. No, I have.
Not
If you
again.
don't mind. If you don't mind.
You know, I do mind. I do mind. I feel that we're not going to be part of your solution right now. I think you all need to work together and then come back.
Somebody made, the attorney made a
No,
statement.
no, we don't need to be part of the argument. Please,
Okay, well,
please. Please.
okay.
Thank
He
you.
made a statement that he didn't know.
So do we continue the hearing?
Yes. Hearing's continued.
Did you want to provide any feedback on the existing plan as it's presented so that the applicant and the abutter have a sense for what you're thinking about the parking in the front yard?
I'd like to say that I concurred with your comments. I hope that they have a copy of them, but any of that could change in some way to make it work out. right, we're all set. Continue to the next hearing, which will be, if you think you would be ready to come back in 2 weeks, what would the date of that be?
July 13th. I'm sorry, July 12th.
July 12th?
And I
If
move
you
that,
can.
that we continue this special permit hearing until July 12th.
Thank you.
Second.
Same place.
All in favor?
Aye.
Disappointing, but
Will you
still
be-
in progress.
Will you
Thank
be
you.
facilitating any of this?
Next.
But before you leave, perhaps it may be helpful with town planner, help facilitate this meeting.
Oh, I'm expecting that.
You know, we're saying they should get together, maybe it would help if the town planner get involved in doing that, if he's
Well,
willing to do
I guess I
so.
shouldn't take that for granted.
I'll be in contact with them.
Thank you.
Yep, certainly.
Thank you.
Right. Yep.
Now the fire.
You can't say we don't want it because it's active.
I wouldn't have, but I'm afraid to win.
I don't know. Next is a public meeting. The applicant is Bowler, is that the correct pronunciation, Engineering, on behalf of the town of Falmouth. Site plan review application to construct a new fire station located at 788 Sandwich Road. Do we have notice?
You do.
Could you?
Would you like them now?
Yes, please.
A public notice of the meeting was published on June 10th, 2022, and 22 abutters were notified by regular mail.
And who do we have speaking for, in fact, how do you pronounce that, Bowler?
This is Bowler. So I'm Ellen, yes,
Oh, okay, thank you.
I'm Ellen Light, Project Manager from Context Architecture. And I'm Ellen Light, Project Manager from Context Architecture.
Okay.
This is Jared Walsh, who's engineer from Bowler, and Steve Kirby, who is our owner's project manager from Vertex. So I'm going to do a brief introduction of the project to just give you a layout of the building on the site and some brief overview of the landscape. Then Jared will get into the detail of the stormwater and other site issues. Steve may want to add something, and then we'll take questions and answers on the project. So I'm starting here with the civil drawing, just to show you the building on the site. On the right side, right here, where I have the pointer, that's the north edge. We're along the park, and there's a playground here. And then we're along Sandwich Road here on the east. And over here on the south is the Unitarian Church. And in the back is a wooded area. Right now, it's a heavily wooded area with a lot of new growth. Much of the site will need to be cleared in order to build the building, but we are leaving as much of the existing growth along the perimeter as we can. The building is about a 10,250 square foot building. It's set back from Sandwich Road. The administration area is set back about 70 feet. And we have the administrative area of the building here on the left, and on the right is a 3-bay apparatus garage for the engines. We have 3 entrances onto the site, 3 paved entrances. On the northerlymost side is what I would call maybe a service drive. It's a 25-foot wide drive that allows the returning engines to come back into the site and come into the back of the station. It also has parking in the rear for staff. There are 11 parking spaces in the rear. In the center of the site is the apron, where the trucks will emerge when they get a call. That part of the building is about 80 foot back from the property line on Sandwich Road. And then over to the most southerly side is a small parking area for visitor parking. We have spaces here for 4 people. This is a substation, so the expectation is that there will not be a lot of public use, but as I'll show you in the floor plan, we do have an entry vestibule for people who may come in for blood pressure or small issues. Going to the next plan, this shows you the landscape plan. As I said, we're trying to keep as much of the existing growth around the perimeter as we can. On the south side, we're adding new evergreen trees to create a screen between our site and the parking, as well as Unitarian Church. And because the site is not irrigated, a good part of the remaining area that you see here will be meadowgrass mix. We have spoken with the department and about maintenance. Because it's a substation, because it's not irrigated, they want as little maintenance as possible for the ground cover. We have some perennials and tall grasses at the front, ornamental grasses. We have added some new trees around the site and an ornamental tree at the front. You can also see here, and Jared will get into more detail, there are 4 retention basins, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a rain garden here. It's also important, as we've developed our landscaping, to not block sight lines when the trucks are emerging here so that they can see down Sandwich Road. This is the floor plan. You probably have that in your packet, just to briefly explain the project. On the left side is the administrative area. It's basically an area that has dorms for 6 firefighters, a kitchen dining area here. The vestibule entry, as I said, is for people who may come in for blood pressure or other emergency assistance. There's a public toilet and a station officer there. Then we have a small watch room, reports room here, where the staff can write up their reports. And the rest of the building, this part is just service area, electrical, mechanical. And then we have at the rear a wellness area and lockers for the dorm space, for the residential. On the right side is the apparatus bay. We have 3 bays. It's double loaded, so we have 3 4-fold doors at the front, which are very quick acting doors, and we have 3 overhead doors at the back. And then the other spaces that you see are spaces that service the apparatus bay. We have turnout gear where they have their lockers. We have a decon room for cleaning their soiled gear, decon lockers and showers. We have equipment storage, EMS supplies. And then to just quickly give you a look of what it looks like, this is the front of the building. This is the main entrance to the administrative area that I've described. Here are the doors to the apparatus bay, the 3 doors. And then off to the side, you see an edge of the dining, kitchen dining day room. This is a head-on elevation of it. This is what you would see from the south side, the church side of the building. This is the entry area, the watch room. Here you have the kitchen day room. Here are the dormitories, and back here the wellness. We're providing as much solar PV panels as we can. So on the south side, you see a lot of PV on the roof. This is the rear of the building. This is the wellness here. This is someone's dorm room. And then over here, we have the 3 app bays with the overhead doors. And finally, this last elevation's on the north side, where there are a few windows into the app bay, the garage area, so they get a little natural light while they're working. And this is the side that faces the park. Finally, just quickly show you the electrical plan. We have pole site lighting along the service drive and in the rear. And we have poles on either side of the apron so that there's adequate lighting for the trucks. All our lighting is dark sky compliant. We're very careful to keep as much lighting as we can on the site. We're very aware of the neighbors across the street and have worked hard to be sensitive to their needs. And one pole light over here at the visitor parking area. And finally, this is a rendering that our electrical engineer put together to show the light spread that you would get from the poles. We found that he's done some photometrics as well, and we found that this is about what needs to be provided for safety, but yet not overly light the site. And then one here. And I would say that this is the sign lighting, but it's a distortion in the image because we understand that we're not going to do backlighting. We're going to do some light from extensions. We are still exploring which ones we will use, but we will. The reason why it looks so bright in this rendering is because of the way he rendered the materials, and frankly, I think it looks a little distorted from what it will be. So with that, here are the lights. This is the area pole fixture that we're talking about. These lights here, they're 16 feet high. We'll have some small wall-mounted fixtures at doors, at the side doors that are required by code. We'll have a couple of wall sconces on either side of the main entry door. And so that's a brief introduction, and I'd like to then turn it over now to Jared, who will talk in more detail about.
Okay, I'd just like to say first, I should have said it before you began, I'm sorry I didn't. I'm an active member of the Unitarian Universalist Meeting House that's next door.
Oh.
But I do think that I can be objective. We're certainly glad the fire station is going to be there and service that area. I asked the town council if I should recuse myself considering, and did not hear back, which I'm taking as a no problem.
Okay.
So just to let you know.
All right, thank you. Jared?
So again, I'm Jared Walsh, working with Bowler as the civil engineer on this project, representing the owner of the site. So thank you for the introduction, Ellen. I'll just talk on a couple of points of the civil aspects of the plan. So just to touch on some of the main aspects of the structure itself, Ellen had said it's just over 10,000 square feet. So it'll be the fire substation building use. There are 3 points of access to the site. This point on Sandwich Road serving that staff parking area in the rear and the apparatus bay entrance from Sandwich Road here. And further down for visitor and accessible parking on the left side, planned left side of your orientation here. As I said, there'll be 4 parking spaces here for visitors and accessible parking, and 11 in the rear for staff parking. So to speak on the utility infrastructure we're proposing for the building, there'll be all utilities will be connecting to existing services within Sandwich Road. So we'll have water and electric coming off of Sandwich Roads right away, and gas as well. We're proposing a transformer here, which will be screened by plantings from the point of view of Sandwich Road. So that'll be also tying into a new moved utility pole plant left. There's an existing pole right here, which will need to be slid to the left in order to allow for the apparatus bay to be accessed by this access point we're proposing. And we will be proposing a transformer and generator equipment in the back here. So those will be mounted on concrete pads at the rear of the building, obstructed from vehicle traffic on Sandwich Road here, so. We will also be proposing a trash dumpster at the rear here, which will be set back from Sandwich Road and screened by a fenced-in enclosure. And to wrap up utilities, well, actually for site, another site aspect, we'll also be proposing a vertical granite curb along Sandwich Road within the right-of-way. And internal to the site, we'll have asphalt bituminous curb and concrete curb at the sidewalk locations here, where pedestrians will be accessing that sidewalk to give them a bit of a protective barrier. To speak on stormwater management, like Ellen said, we'll be proposing above-ground infiltration basins across the site to capture the impervious area and the stormwater volume created by that. So Ellen already pointed those out along the perimeter, and we'll also have a rain garden here collecting pervious area, stormwater volume, and some volume off of the building structure itself. These will be designed to meet post-development peak rates and also provide treatment to total suspended solids across the impervious areas on the site that we're proposing. And we've also proposed catch basins at the property line here before that stormwater volume hits the public way, which I know is a requirement by the town. And we've also indicated some snow storage areas outside of our infiltration basins across the site. So we've clouded these areas. These were a new addition to the plan, which stemmed from the engineering referral that we had got. I'll speak on that at the end of my presentation here, but we've shown two areas here in the landscaped areas outside of the apparatus bay pavement area. And then we'll also have some snow storage along the parking row plan north behind the building itself. So just to speak on a couple quick landscaping points, the proposed vegetation that we've shown on our plan is native, low maintenance, selected to not require infiltration once that, irrigation, not infiltration, after establishment of those plantings as a request of the building committee. There's just a concern with the maintenance across the site, and they were very adamant about proposing low maintenance plantings. And that also rolls into the lawn and seed mixes that have been chosen across the site, also hoping to get low maintenance across the site development footprint. And we've also made an effort to maintain as many existing trees as we can along the site perimeter so as to not affect the existing vegetation as much as possible across the site. So just to wrap up, we've received a couple referral letters from various departments, including the water department. There were no comments as there's existing water in Sandwich Road, and we're showing connections out to Sandwich Road, and the proper permits will be filed before building permit. From the engineering department, we're in the process of responding to those comments formally, and it'll require some plan revisions, so and stormwater calculation revisions based on those comments. So we will be actively working to respond to those before we appear next before the board. We've also received some planning department staff comments, which I'm sure Jed will get to at the end here. And we will also be working with the Board of Health on submitting a septic plan and calculations to them to be reviewed probably after we respond to these engineering comments, as there will be some plan changes which we'd like to have captured in the plan we submit. And per the engineering referral letter we had got, we did not make a formal letter outlining which requirements we'll need relief from prior to the meeting. We'll be submitting that formal letter in response to the comments, but I just wanted to highlight a couple to you at the meeting tonight. We'll need a waiver requesting a total of 3 driveway curb cuts coming off of Sandwich Road. I know 1 is only allowed per zoning, and we'll also need a waiver for an driveway curb cut in excess of 24 feet, as 24 feet is the maximum allowed width per zoning. And there's also some waivers we'll need from the landscape performance standards. We'll one of the landscape plan contents requirements is that you need to show existing trees greater than 4 inches in caliper and greater than 4.5 feet in height on the survey. As we're developing the site and clear cutting a lot of the trees on the site, this hasn't been performed as it's densely wooded today. So we will need relief from that requirement. There's also a requirement to have street trees along the public way on Sandwich Road. We'll need a waiver from that requirement, as this wasn't proposed as part of the plan scope and use relating back to the visible line of sight out to Sandwich Road for these emergency vehicles. We're hoping to receive a waiver from that requirement. And also for parking lot interiors, you're supposed to have a certain amount of square footage associated with the parking lot interiors dedicated to pervious area. So we'll need a waiver from that requirement for this, for the minor parking areas on site and the general use of the site. We feel that this waiver would be adequate for this proposed development. But that concludes my, my description of the civil components, so we can open it up for questions.
John?
Just one question. You mentioned an area there where the firefighters will clean off their uniforms or their... And I just wonder, are you going to capture that?
Decon?
The decon.
Yes, it'll be captured within the plumbing system within the building. We have an oil and gas separator as well for the garage area, but yes, it's being captured by plumbing.
What happens after it gets captured?
So one of the engineering referral comments is that we'll need to propose a tight tank in the back of the site. So any internal garage plumbing that's captured internal to the building, that'll need to be pumped out from a tight tank in the rear of the building.
And taken somewhere for disposal?
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Paul?
I have a basic comment. I think the project is great. I think everyone supports it. I like the layout, the building, et cetera, but I have a concern about the site plan. Your site plan doesn't show the area, including the ball fields, so you can't really tell that. Could you put this on? Yeah. When we went to town meeting for approval, we had a site plan that showed the layout that people approved. And what I did was take that and I marked it up a little bit for your consideration. If you look at the, you see Sandwich Road, and the crosshatch area, ignore that for the moment. But the white outline was the outline of the site proposed to town meeting. And what I'm suggesting is that you look at it, if you would extend the property a little further along Sandwich Road and bring that white line in, you would have room for a potential future ball field in 10 years or whenever as the development grows there. By showing the way you are, you preclude that opportunity in the future. Now, it doesn't change anything in your site plan. All it would do was change some parking on the north side, perhaps the side. But it would appear to me that perhaps you should look at some future repercussions by showing the site plan the way you have it. But I suggest you just look at a more elongated site along Sandwich Road. And if you look at your site plan, there's really nothing up there except parking. So it doesn't affect anything in your design. But it would offer a potential for development, should it be necessary, where the growth of the town is in East Falmouth. I'd mentioned that to one of the members of the committee, Citizens Committee, but I don't know where it went or whether it got back to you, but it seemed to me it would make some sense to do that.
Steve Kirby with Vertex Companies. I just want to make sure I understand what you're proposing. You're This being a fire station, as opposed to being farther in depth, you're suggesting it gets shallower and wider. Am I correct?
Along Sandwich Road, correct.
Along Sandwich Road.
It's the same, it'd probably be the same area, but it would bring in that northernmost border a little further down. And the only effect it would have on you would be with the parking.
Well, I mean, we can certainly look at it. I know.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, that we've, made a number of considerations for essentially the depth of the apron to keep it off being right on top of of Sandwich Road, and then the issue with the neighbors, but also we have area in the back because the proposed septic leaching field is in the back of the building. So, I mean, we can certainly look at everything, but there's, the depth of that parcel has been looked at and tried to be as tight as possible. But we'll certainly consider your.
I can't understand your drawing.
Well,
What's
the
ground
white
cover?
area
No, I don't see a white area.
is the
Where's brown?
parcel that was approved by town meeting.
This is the,
This
the
white
line he's
area,
referring
yeah.
to.
And all I'm suggesting is if they were extending that parcel along Sandwich Road up to the parking lot, that's a dead space, and moving the north border down a little bit, you would have an opportunity, if it's necessary, to put in another ball field there.
Do you have any dimensions you could share with them?
I didn't take all the dimensions, I was just looking at an overall thing, because these are the guys that are gonna have to do it.
Okay, thank you.
But it would be a shame in 10 years from now, they say, gee, if we only knew.
Does that orange area show where a ball field would go? And so that's what you're saying, we have a green, that would be a new ball field if they made it
Yeah.
wider
Yeah.
instead of longer, yep.
It's,
Same dimensions, just a different shape.
and it doesn't affect the layout, because all you're doing is moving parking from the upper portion to perhaps to the side. I'm just suggesting you look at it.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I make?
Yeah.
The only comments that the planning office had in relation to the site were actually covered by Jared. It was the number of driveways, the size of the driveways. We noted the indication of the landscaping plan.
Yep.
And of course, now I'm forgetting the last one. But it was a minor comment.
About street trees. And then there was something about parking that I didn't quite catch.
Yeah, let me just check really quick. Oh, it was just the front setback line. So the original plans just had a 25-foot setback. On Sandwich Road in that area is 35. So the planning staff has no other issues with the plans as presented.
John?
I looked through the documents, I didn't see any referral from the fire department on this. Usually we get a referral from them.
As you may have noted in my staff report, it did indicate the same. However, I assumed that they were in favor of this proposal.
I think they've been involved.
That's funny.
Very much so.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
there'll be further things that are coming. I would like to make a comment, actually on the looks of the building, the aesthetics of it. It very much fits in the neighborhood. Yes, it does. And thank you. That's great.
We've worked with a very big building committee, and I think we've worked very collaboratively, so that's how we came to it. It's been a pleasure working.
Right, it's going to fit right in. What's your time frame?
So yeah, we just have to compile our responses to those referral comments. Hoping to get to that. Next week's a holiday week, but I know we'll be having staff work on that, so hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we can issue a formal response.
Well, you're already doing site work over there.
Do you mean what is our
Gotta come to
Time
the
frame
mic.
for the building.
Oh, gotcha.
Right.
Our hope is to put it out with early September.
Yeah, the idea. The intent is to go out to bid in the fall and potentially start construction in the late fall, but we are discussing what the duration of the project should be, only because of some of the ongoing supply chain issues. So there's a little discussion there, but right now that's the intent, is to have the bid documents really ready by end of August, beginning of September, and go out to bid.
Okay, so you'll be back soon with your waiver request in print, and we'll see it. So would that be at our next meeting? On the 12th?
Next meeting would be the 12th of July.
Okay,
Summer's going by fast.
thank you.
Just got here.
Next.
Kim Fish is not here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yes, public comment.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. As you know, I'm Bob Ament, and I generally support the fire station in the location. I have a lot of history with this property over the years, dealing with it at town meeting and having been involved in the acquisition of the adjacent property by the Jewish congregation and the Unitarian Fellowship, and conceiving of the division of the property for those two groups, but also the creation of the cemetery of the Jewish congregation. So I have a lot of interest in the property. My first question is, and I didn't check this out, I should have, but this project is more than a 10,000 square foot building. Isn't that subject to the Cape Cod Commission? Maybe Jed knows the answer to that question. Maybe there's an exemption for the municipal project.
That's exactly the case. I've already checked with the Cape Cod Commission. They indicated because of the municipal use, it's not required to file with the commission.
Okay, well, thank you very much. My main concern really is the protection of the land behind the fire station. And so my thinking about the future of that is very different than Paul's. When the playing fields were created years ago, it was pretty much promised to the neighborhood at the time. I was representing the former owner of all this property, Paul Dupuy, who at the time still had a house nearby. And it was represented that all of the property would not be developed, all of the 14 or 18 acres that are involved here. And I think to put a playing field with that kind of activity next to the cemetery would be a great disservice. If this were a Cape Cod Commission case, then the commission would be requiring open space, and that parcel would be protected. And I really wish that we once and for all could protect that sector of the property. I appreciate that. I don't know if the planning board has the authority to waive the provisions regarding the separation of driveways. You can't have a driveway, can't have more than 2 curb cuts on a single parcel unless each of the curb cuts is separated by 300 feet from any driveway serving a parking lot of 20 or more cars. And both the Unitarian Fellowship's parking lot serves more than 20 cars, as does the town's driveway to the playing fields. And I'm simply concerned about the town following the zoning bylaws, because the town has gotten into trouble in other cases, as you know, where it didn't. And that's one thing that came to mind. Anything the planning board can do to protect that land behind the fire station site would be appreciated. Thanks.
I don't know what means would be available. what means would be available for that?
Call it open space.
Who would call it?
In our plan, we would, in the site plan, it's open space.
Unbuildable open space.
Well, it's not part of the application.
Not, that part of the lot is
Four
not
corners of the lot,
on this
So
plan.
it's not part of the application.
No.
only to be looking at what we see and what they applied for.
I guess the question is whether there's any provision in the zoning bylaw that allows the planning board in site plan review to require any open space.
I'm not aware of any. Is anyone aware of any?
I'm not directly aware of it, but I'd want to spend more time with the bylaw.
Right.
And I can certainly follow up with town council related to the relief for site plan review as it relates to the municipal use, to just get some clarification on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bob also pointed out the spacing of the drives, too. That's what
Exactly.
you're talking about?
That's what I'm
there.
talking
Okay.
about, yep.
It'd be interesting to know the language that the Cape Cod Commission has that creates that prohibition of, I don't know how it's worded in whatever their bylaws are that would prevent an active use next to a cemetery.
If I'm understanding Attorney Ahmed's comments, it would be in relation to if the proposal were not a municipal use and it exceeded 10,000 square feet, I believe the intent would be to, during that review process, also require open space to offset the size of the development.
Right,
If I'm
right.
understanding their regulations correctly.
And, yes, and I got that same sense from it. I just wonder what the language is, where that's written in the Cape Cod Commission's rules.
I don't know the exact,
Yeah.
we
We should look into it and see what where there's any possibility for that restriction on, that's town land, right? Right now,
Right.
it's all town land.
Right.
Hmm.
And we can certainly look back through the file to, look for that commitment from the town to, keep that from being developed.
Mm-hmm.
I have no issue doing that. But again, that back land is not part of this application at
No.
this point. So,
It's not, and I don't know what added complexity it would create for an approval process when they're trying to move forward.
Probably it wouldn't, because
It
it's
might not.
They're two separate
Yeah.
parcels now.
Two separate ideas, yeah.
Yeah,
But I do remember exactly what Bob's talking about. So it's not all together.
from back then.
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, just for clarity for the applicant, I believe, I understand them to be providing responses to the comments, revising the plans if necessary, and resubmitting with a engineering review anticipated, all for the July 12th
All
meeting.
for July 12th, so that their application to us will be complete, they hope, by the 12th.
Okay.
Right. Okay, then.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Bob. That's, I didn't know that history on the land there. Hmm. Yeah, it was a while ago, although,
He's not here, huh?
That's where the original poorhouse was, way out there.
really?
Yeah, I think
Kim
so.
Fish.
It was brought in here.
Not tonight.
Maybe not. I
Not here.
thought it was.
I
Told me
don't
she was
think there was
coming.
any prior building.
The meeting house, there's an old meeting house out there. What was on the site
Make a motion, we adjourn.
for the church?
But
I don't think the poorhouse was on that location, but of course, the meeting house is still there in the same location it's been since 1797. The parsonage is down the street, down Hatchville Road. And I think that the poorhouse was on the intersection of Hatchville Road and Sandwich.
It's in the general area.
Yeah, it was very close to there.
Yeah, I knew it was in the general area. I didn't say specifically on this site. Don't have that knowledge. Yeah.
And just for the history of those who don't know, So this property was under agreement, that is the 75 acres, including all of this, and stretching all the way down to Coonamessett Pond. It was under agreement at the same time for both a sale to the town and a sale to a nursing home developer that the same people who run the village at Duxbury, what I think is a wonderful facility. So a senior care retirement community was proposed for the site on the portion that became the playing fields. That required town meeting to change the zoning to allow senior care retirement community. That was the origin of the portion of our bylaw that has senior care retirement community in it. 2 years in a row, town meeting voted by 60% to make that change, but we never got the 2/3 vote that was needed to change the zoning. The applicant agreed to 200-foot setbacks for this building, and it would have been a facility that would have been great for Falmouth to have, I think. But the town bought it for the whole parcel for open space. They would have gotten the whole parcel. They would have gotten the 50 acres anyway, and then on the front 25 acres, or actually 18, which is what was developed. But for the playing fields, we have playing fields with all the trees taken down and now a fire station, instead of the senior care retirement community, which would have been the biggest taxpayer in town, and the town wouldn't have had to spend $3.5 million to have bought the property, which was even more money back then than it is today. So it was an interesting thing, and I thought you might like to know that history. Thanks.
Right, it is interesting, thank you. Okay, next on our agenda, we were going to have our housing coordinator, Kim Fish, but because Pam and her husband, David, both have COVID, and that's why Pam is not here, Jed spoke with Kim, and she was willing to put it off until we can be sure that Pam will be here. So we will not have that now. Instead, we'll have committee reports, and I'd like to explain something to the board members. What does committee reports mean? Rather than trying to foresee which committees would be reporting or which discussion items we might want, I thought it'd be handy for us as a board to have a catch-all so that we could discuss things. And so we settled on committee reports. That had happened before Jim had asked if we could please discuss recodification, which I felt we could under committee reports. So that's what it's doing there. And there's going to be an addition now to the agenda under committee reports listing the active committees so that we know and the public knows which subcommittees of the board are active. Not liaison assignments, because they come and go and they be too numerous, but just subcommittees of the board. What do you think of that?
You're just going to list them on the agenda sheet.
On the agenda.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it doesn't mean we have to hear from all of them.
Right.
It just means it's a potential.
When I was chairman, David Straits was on every agenda. I made sure it was, whether we talked about it
I
or not.
remember it.
Yeah, but
Just for that reason.
But in effect, it will be now.
It does the same thing, right, yes, I
Right.
understand.
Because I think our active subcommittees now are recodification, Davis Straits, and, got another one.
LCP?
No, we haven't really formalized that yet. There were 3 that I sent you.
Yeah.
Local comprehensive plan.
No, not
Local
yet.
comprehensive plan, thank you.
Well, that is
No.
LCP.
No, we haven't gotten there. There's a different one. Whatever it is, there'll be 3 of them there. And it's good that we have this reminder, clearly.
Are you suggesting you don't want committee reports for the liaisons to other committees?
No, we can have those. You want a heading that says liaison reports?
I do, but when you get off this subject, I'll be happy to.
Okay, but we're not off it yet, because in fact, there was a request to discuss the recodification subcommittee, which we will. Pat and I serve on the recodification subcommittee, which grinds on and on for how many years?
Oh, no.
So, we
That
have,
goes before we actually are doing something now.
right.
It goes back to something like 2009, I think, in my records.
and you'll recall that with Phase 1, town meeting approved it. It went off to the Attorney General's. We waited to hear back from the Attorney General. Between our last meeting and this meeting, the Attorney General did not send us a determination about it. The office there, sent a text to the Planning Department and the Legal Department. So the text message was received that had some findings in it, items, that now have to be worked through. And they are numerous, actually, and some of them are Scrivener's errors, they're incredibly minor, things that didn't make it from the old plan into the old bylaw into the new bylaw, unchanged as they should have done, but didn't, they just were overlooked. Some things that are in the nature of, they're being labeled by the Attorney General as new, but they're one sentence that added an intention that appeared to be missing. It did not in any way change the bylaw, but they have been noted. And then there are things, the most substantive, which we had already come across in the group that is working, our own group working on corrections, that the auxiliary housing bylaw, which is actually a very lengthy bylaw, somehow got truncated in the new one. It just plain got cut in some way. Looks like one of those mistakes you make on Microsoft and don't notice. And of course, that was picked up, so that there are changes of different natures that have to be addressed. It leaves us in something of a limbo. Did you want to go further, Jim? Jed,
The only thing
please.
I would add is that Town Council is actively working with the Attorney General's office to sort of clarify the situation for us and identify a path forward for the town. And at this point, they're still working on that, and we hope to have some more documentation and some more information for you very soon, so we can provide the most comprehensive update you can imagine. That's all
Any
I can-
questions? Any comments?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, my concern is, I thought we made a decision based on the truncated accessory apartment bylaw, which means we were recognizing the recodification and using it. And then at the same time, I've come to learn there's serious changes that have to be corrected, go back to town meeting, and get voted on. And what you have to understand is for both property owners and people that deal with property, we're making decisions and negotiating deals based on zoning, and now we have something, it's neither fish nor fowl. I think, from all the discussions I've had with you, all of you, is we don't have a new bylaw. We have to use the old one until the new one gets corrected, because we're taking a significant, I haven't got to read them all yet, but a significant amount of numbers to town meeting for a new vote. So we should not be referring to a brand-new revised bylaw that isn't approved by the Attorney General, that no one really knows when it's gonna get approved or if it will. It makes it almost impossible to negotiate a real estate deal with that kind of unsurety. You know, it's just impossible. I'm in the middle of a couple of them, and I don't even know how to answer people. So I think I think the answer has to be, we're going by the old bylaw until the new one's fixed. And I'd like that to come from the board, if you all agree. Because I'm finding it really hard. I haven't gone through all the lists yet, but just the ones we've discussed, I'm finding it difficult.
John?
Just a clarification, when you say the old bylaw, you mean the language of the old bylaw?
Right.
Everything. The recodification is not in use yet. It's not approved by the Attorney General. But we've actually used it once already. So how do we reconcile that?
Right, and so that's what Town Council is working with them to figure out for us. And I think, you know, it is safe to say that you will likely be using the old bylaw because of the fact that it is not currently approved. The recodification is not currently approved by the Attorney General. But again, we're working with Town Council to figure out the answer to that as fast as we can. And like I said, we will be trying to provide updates to the board as best we can along the way in the most expeditious way possible.
You just kind of took the edge off there, though. Is the new codification, is that in effect, yes or no?
Well, as you know, with recodifications, it becomes effective as of the date town meeting approves it, subject to the Attorney General's approval, and in between, so you are essentially, as an applicant, proceeding at your own risk using the new bylaw that town meeting approved. Now, we're in this situation, we'll call it, because the Attorney General has extended us for a period of time to get more information, and also is right now reviewing it in more detail, and we're still working with Town Council to figure out exactly where that leaves us. Currently, the advice, which I concur with, is that we will be using the old bylaw, because at this point, we have not received approval from the Attorney General on the recodified bylaw. But again, all of that needs to be confirmed by Town Council with the Attorney General to make sure that we're all using the same playbook.
And you expect that to come soon?
Yes, they are.
Be a long
They are
limbo.
actively working on that now. Because the last thing we want to be doing is giving inappropriate advice or holding applicants to two versions or just creating confusion. That's the last thing we want. So,
Bob, did you wish to comment?
I have a couple of comments. Thanks, and Jed, one first to you, this question for clarification. You just said that a new bylaw, the recodification, is retroactive to town meetings passing. Is that different than retroactive to the first notice of a hearing on it, or is that what you meant to say?
well, it is effective to the meeting, town meeting approval, and then back toward to the notice of the first public hearing.
Right, so it's actually back 2 or 3 months before town meeting.
Right.
would be
Middle
the
of
day.
September is when you opened your public hearing to consider the recodification.
So I'd like the board to understand that it's, if the bylaw the recodification is approved, it will be retroactive to 2 or 3 months even before the November town meeting. And that's what's creating an untenable situation. And if the recodification corrections requires going to back to town meeting, and since I don't know what the objections of the Attorney General were, I don't have much of an opinion about that yet. It's really an untenable situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be much better for the Attorney General to simply disapprove what has been received, which apparently at this time cannot be approved. But it'd be nice to just disapprove it, and let's go to town meeting in November with corrections. And at that time also try to make it a better recodification, because we've identified some things that could make it better. One problem I'd like you to be aware of that I've thought a little bit about and don't know the answer to is that the Mr. Cod bylaw, which is so important and potentially so beneficial to the town, and which people are working on using, which is what the planning board certainly wants, that was passed as Article 5. And if I'm correct, that one has been approved by the Attorney General, so it's in effect as part of the current bylaw.
Right.
But the recodification did not include it. Now, if the recodification replaces the zoning bylaw that was in effect, I'm not sure what happens to Mr. Cod. And I think that's a good that alone, along with everything else going on, not of all of which I'm really up on, I really think that it should be made clear, we shouldn't be trying to I would think the planning board and the town should not be trying to get the Attorney General to approve something that's apparently defective. It should be disapproved so that we know what bylaw is now in effect. And at the next town meeting, I would suggest that the recodification, when voted, stipulate an effective date so that the Attorney General can approve it and it's not retroactive. I think that could be done. So those are a couple of thoughts and a couple of suggestions, but the situation we're in now is pretty terrible.
It is, and that's very helpful, thank you.
Really, all I have to provide is, it is our top priority
Right.
to straighten that out, because we understand the complexity of it. Top priority.
I just want to put a timetable for those aren't practitioners. We usually, when you're negotiating a sale of a commercial property, you usually give them a period of time, 60 days due diligence to read the zoning. And then after that, their deposits go hard and they can't get their money back. And so that the sale goes forward, or some period like that of due diligence. We can't do this in this situation because we don't know what's going to be.
Well, we're hoping it will be clarified very quickly.
Very quickly.
Okay, tomorrow would be good for me. I got a couple of people I
Tomorrow
gotta
would be
answer to.
excellent for me as well.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Once town meeting approves the document, it goes to the Attorney General. The Attorney General will either approve or disapprove it or whatever. But he approves it based on the date of approval of town meeting.
He didn't approve it.
No, if he does, he refers to the date the town meeting approved it, doesn't he?
No,
No,
it's to the date of the
The
first
earlier
public
date to when
hearing.
his first hearing started.
Okay.
So people are only, it's a grandfathering clause. If you had something going and you applied for a permit or something
Well, I
before
underst-
that date, you would
Yeah, I
not be
understand
subject to
that,
the
but I'm
bylaw.
just wondering, we're gonna get caught in the middle there where they say you gotta have a town meeting approval before he looks at it.
Well, we're,
And he refers back to that particular date.
but we're hoping that the next step is the Attorney General is going to disapprove it. So none of it is in effect at all, and we're working with the bylaw as it was before any recodification was at a public hearing or went to town meeting,
Maybe you should tell the Attorney General to disapprove it.
except that Mr. Cod was passed separately.
Mr. Cod would stay in effect.
Right,
Correct.
stays in effect, but the recodification doesn't. And then we have to fix up whatever the flaws are
We're gonna
and
get caught
take
in
it
the
all
middle.
forward to
That's kind of
November,
like what I'm
hopefully,
asking.
and be sure that we request a November date for effectiveness, so that when we go forward, we have to be sure it includes a request for an effective date.
Well, could I ask if the town planner and the town council, and for that matter, the chairman of the planning board, if your present posture is trying to work with the Attorney General to solve their problems and get it approved, or is the Attorney General being said, we see all these problems, we're going to go back to town meeting, so we understand that it's being disapproved, or will you send us a letter saying it's disapproved? It sounds to me like you just said, Charlotte, that getting it disapproved so that we know what bylaw is in effect is the right thing to do.
Yes, that's right, because this was sent without a cover letter, just a list of things that are questioned.
Well,
So that we don't
then I
know
asked the town planner, is that the posture? Are you telling the Attorney General, fine, disapprove it?
Well, I'm not telling the Attorney General anything, but the town council is working with the Attorney General to figure that particular topic out.
It sounds to me like the planning board does not want the recodification to be approved at this point because of these issues that have arisen.
We have been led to believe that there were enough things that needed to be fixed that were substantive enough that some of them, at least, have to go to town meeting.
Well,
So it might be
everybody
better,
Again, it's.
our initial conversations between the legal department and the planning department, and myself and Pat, and I think that was it, is we might be best off saying to the Attorney General, don't leave us in limbo, just disapprove it. That's what we thought.
I mean, at the risk of saying it again, the town council is investigating all of the options to try and give us a better sense for how we move forward. And at this point, I can't comment more about that because
Right.
I'm not involved in those conversations. So it's really town council and attorney general to figure that out. And as soon as we know, everyone will know. No one likes this.
No
No
one
one
likes
enjoys
it.
this position.
It's weird.
it was an awesome task, too. It's really big to get it done, and it's been worked on hard. But I don't think we lose anything.
These were supposed to have been the best consultants.
No, but to be honest with you, I was shocked that it got approved in one shot. I would have
by
thought.
town meeting?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
I couldn't either.
So
Really?
maybe, I think, I haven't had time to look over this list, but maybe it isn't approved. If there was enough big things that would have to be changed, and they say it has to go back to town meeting. I
No,
don't
they didn't
think-
say that.
They didn't?
No.
We don't know
Nothing
yet.
Oh, we don't
with-
know, okay.
Nothing with any
Just not
clarity has
clear.
been said.
Right. Nothing definitive has been decided, nothing.
Right.
It's just
We're in a
simply,
fog.
Well, where do we stand on the hearing we had on that accessory apartment that we used the new bylaw? How flawed is that?
that's on my homework list to figure out.
But
So
it
that's
shouldn't-
what really got me confused, is when we
Certainly.
started approving things on it, and they started hearing about that it's not done yet. That's where I said I don't even understand what's going on.
Mr. Ahmed, thank you for your comments.
Yeah, and
Very
thank you
helpful.
for your time.
This board knows that I had a lot of problems with the recodification, because I said so. But I respected the work that that you all did. And I know what good faith went into it. And I know how much you wanted the bylaw passed last year. And I said nothing at town meeting. But we're out now in a position it's just untenable. And I think the only answer is to do it better next year, because I don't think some of the questions are not going to go away. If you start changing terms in what's been already voted by town meeting, I don't know how you could do that. Town meeting made a vote, and if there are things wrong with it, who can correct that other than town meeting?
Charlotte, I think it's important, though, we keep saying bring it back in November. I think it's important to note that if we say, no, we have to go back to the original form, that we may be pushing it again and making mistakes if we try to bring it back too quickly.
Right.
Bring it back as soon as we can.
Yes,
think
I'd
we
rather
brought it
have it
close.
done that way.
We would. That's true.
And if we need to spend more money with the different, reviewing it or other people checking it, by all means, it's so important, we should do it.
When you consider how far back our bylaws went, and we were redoing everything and finding all of the inconsistencies that were found, a lot of that was due to the reorganization that, oh my gosh, it hit you in the face, the inconsistencies. And a lot of that is what's being found now too, or it didn't transpose correctly. I don't think we can run the risk of doing that again. We have to take our time if we don't, if we have to go back to town meeting. I think we've got to take our time
I
and,
don't disagree with you.
yeah, I think it's really just important that we understand all of the options on the table and that we thoroughly think through those to make sure that we're making the best choice possible for the town. I mean, ultimately, that's what this is for. So, as soon as we have that information, that's what we intend to provide to the board. Because, as you know, in order to bring things forward to town meeting, they have to be on the warrant at a certain time, and that lead-up time is coming up very soon.
that's my point.
Typically look at the end of this, middle of the summer, towards the end of July, to start opening our hearings, to consider changes to any amendments or amendments to bring forward
Right,
to town
but
meetings.
some of the input, I'm not disagreeing with you, but just further information along these lines. Some of the input that we haven't received yet, Bob and Bob, our two consultants, haven't responded yet either to what the state has said, what the AG said. So I particularly want to see that.
And my comments were elicited because where we are on the calendar.
Yes. No, all
Thursday is the
factors.
last day in June, and we're getting into hearing time now
Yeah.
for fall town meeting.
Yep,
Absolute top priority.
okay. Too bad, we had other things that we would prefer to be working on, heavens knows, but we'll do this.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Bob.
Any other committee reports?
Did you want to say something about that, Davis Straits form base that we're meeting
Oh,
via Zoom.
you say that, Pat, because in fact, I'm unclear, who is on the Davis Strait Subcommittee? I'm getting,
I'm unclear too at this
yes,
point.
because I'm getting the emails, and I don't think, I'm not participating in the scheduling, because I don't think I'm on the subcommittee.
I am.
Yeah,
I know
you
it.
are, I am, and I thought
Is
you
that-
were.
Is that guy Green still on it, or is he gone?
Yep, Tony Green's still on it.
Green?
Yep, but in terms of the planning board, it was Jim and it was Pat.
Oh, okay.
Charlotte, you had joined the working group sort of as a ex officio member, if you will.
Just
if you
listening,
will.
right.
Okay.
Just listening. That's the only reason we've included you in
You
the
should
email.
get us, Chairman, you should see what's going on.
Yeah, well, I like listening, but I don't have, yeah.
The good news is we've got a draft bylaw to consider for tomorrow night for our working group meeting. And the consultants will be there to explain the
Have you
changes
looked at
that
it?
they've made since our last working group meeting.
Wait, well, one member of the subcommittee doesn't have that draft.
You're on the original email,
Okay.
but I'll double check and re-forward.
Well, I can tell you the last 2 weeks have been very confusing.
Can imagine.
My son was in a terrible car accident. He's my total assistant. My son, my life's been a bit
Yeah.
upside down. And then this issue is taking all some of the real estate deals I'm into and turn them upside down and backwards. So it's been a confusing week for me. I must have missed it. Or
Would
2
you
weeks.
prefer digital copy or paper?
Oh, definitely digital. I
Okay.
got
think
a
you'll
larger
have
big so I
that.
can read it.
Jim, I think you'll have that on
I
the
probably have it.
computer.
I'm sure it's on my machine. I'll just look for it.
Was that
Okay.
about a week ago?
Yep.
Yeah, well, that would have been right about the time
Oh, yeah.
the accident happened, so.
So how's he coming along?
He walked from his house in T-Ticket to my office today and
Oh,
worked for 2 hours, maybe 2.5.
ah,
So it was
Getting
that
better,
was
yeah.
a good sign.
Yeah.
it's remarkable that he didn't break any bones or hurt
You-
internal organs or something.
The car had to be towed
Yeah,
from hitting him. It hit his body, the car had to be towed.
you hate to just even picture it.
He's like an Ironman.
Mm.
Okay, so that meeting is going to be tomorrow night via Zoom.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
6:30.
6:30, yeah.
6:30, yep.
And we have a liaison committee meeting report also, transportation.
Well, I have two committee reports. One is the Water Quality Management. You included this, and due to late time, I suggest we deal with that next time.
Oh, okay.
I attended the Water Quality Management meeting yesterday, and they then went into a joint meeting with the Health Department. So rather than just run through that, I'd like to pick that up next time, due to
Okay.
late time. Transportation Committee report last night to the Select Board. The Vice Chair made the presentation and outlined the achievements and so forth, and also talked about a number of issues in the committee's opinion were not helpful to getting things done. And there was some personal criticisms against the town manager and against the Select Board. It went on for quite some time. And then another member of the committee got up and actually criticized the Select Board for not supporting a lot of the activities going on. So it was a pretty controversial thing. And this morning, they sent an email in that we agreed last week at the last meeting that suggested the Select Board suspend the activities of the Transportation Committee for a short period of time until they appoint the 3 members that are missing to the committee.
Ah,
That was my recommendation. I also suggested that the Select Board look at the mission statement, and the committee did not agree to add that. So the email, a copy went to you and about 30 other people today, showing that they requested that the Select Board cease operations for a short period. And what that does to this committee, I don't know. Whether the committee is reconstituted again and what it looks like, I'm not quite sure. This committee is going to have to decide who the representative should be at that Transportation Committee, if there is one as well. It's been a very difficult committee to work with, so I'm not sure what's going to happen now.
well, there's some difficult people there. Paul, I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to do it.
But
And
this
when
has
you see
happened
the new
before.
committee, we'll see if you're willing to continue, yeah.
You don't know.
This is an old pattern. This has happened before with this committee.
They resigned in one mass.
Last time. So,
You'll have a new feeling about it after your son's accident.
No, I'm always, bikeways, I think bike safety is really important.
Yeah.
And I tried to sanitize it. If you want to look at it, you can get the video from our friends in the hall here,
FCTV.
and you can look at it. It came on about 8, meeting started, what, 7, it came on about 8:10 or so, maybe after that.
Well, thank you for sticking with it. Any other liaison reports? Announcements?
I think I was premature in announcing the art thing. I don't think we're gonna be able to get it done for this year. It might be another year.
Oh.
The board was looking for all kinds of answers, insurance costs and all kinds of planning, and I can't do it until I find out who's coming and what, so I could not answer the scope of their questions, so I was in agreement to put it off for a year
Put it
and
off.
work on it.
It's a nice idea.
It's a good idea.
It's a great idea, yeah.
I have one other thing, if I may. Falmouth Station is celebrating its 150th anniversary
Yeah.
arrival of the train, as we talked about, on July 18th. I was asked to prepare a proclamation. The select board signed it on Monday night last week, and I put it into a frame and gave it to the EDIC and suggested that they have a proper celebration for it like they did 5 years ago when they reopened the station.
Mhm.
I gave them a list of people to invite, a sample of the banner and everything else. Nothing happened. I ran into Sam Patterson last night at down the hall here, and I asked him, what's going on? He sent me an email today, they're gonna have a moderate event, give it out ice cream. So, I don't know what to say. I think it's a big deal. I think it's good for the town. It's good for EDIC to show something. And EDIC is apparently downplaying it due to other issues I'm not fully aware of. So I'm a little disappointed that they're not making a big deal for it, because I think it's good for the town. And it would be good for EDIC to show them in a very good light.
I don't think the air is back in everybody's balloon after COVID. You know, they're just lower energy than before. Maybe it's just that, because it is a good idea.
I'm certainly full of hot air. I'm ready to go. But I just got so many different things to do.
Sorry about that.
We adjourn.
Oh, not yet.
Okay, general correspondence. I don't think we
No,
had any.
Jed has an announcement too.
Oh,
Well, the only announcement I have is that the assistant town planner interviews went very well. I'm looking to make my recommendation to the acting town manager very soon. This week's been unusually busy, so we're delayed in that a bit, but we will get there. So we anticipate having something to his desk by the end of the week. So, very excited.
it is exciting. We're all hopeful.
Good candidate,
Excellent.
better than you?
Likely.
Future agenda items. Future agenda items. We have one we're going to take up next time. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.